According to the people of Reddit, Tears of the Kingdom is stupid and dumb and terrible. According to YouTube, Tears of the Kingdom is bad and unfinished and sloppy. And I'm not sure I completely agree with all of that, but I will say, I think Tears of the Kingdom is worse than Breath of the Wild, and by a lot. But instead of beating a dead horse, I'll offer a different perspective. Not only will I go into what I think Tears of the Kingdom did wrong, but I'll talk about what I think we should have gotten from what we were given. By no means do I think either Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom are bad games. But if I were to put it in one sentence, I think Breath of the Wild is worth $60, and Tears of the Kingdom is not. Make no mistake, the abilities are pretty good. Ultrahand is a great upgrade to Magnesis, and reversing time is a good staple for any video game. Ascension might also be the greatest open-world Zelda ability ever created. But I had two constant thoughts while playing Tears of the Kingdom. One of them was, God, I miss stasis. And this is a complicated thought. Stasis doesn't have a place in Tears of the Kingdom. In fact, most of the Breath of the Wild abilities don't, and for an interesting reason. Breath of the Wild was focused on puzzle solving, and Tears of the Kingdom was focused on exploration. If we look at the abilities from each game, it makes sense why each of them were added. Breath of the Wild gives you a limited set of powers that forces you to get creative with what you can do, something that calls back to the greater legacy of Zelda games. Tears of the Kingdom hands you creative mode on a silver platter and says, go nuts. But returning Zelda players are used to the critical and constructive thinking of Breath of the Wild and games before it. So by giving the players so much freedom, it actually hinders what Zelda gameplay is usually about. Usually, you're able to overcome this on your own, but there's one ability that was completely ruined because of it. The Tears of the Kingdom trailers had two main highlights. Wow, guys look, sky, and wow, guys look, build. And for being a main feature and technological wonder of the game, Fuse failed during actual gameplay. Functionally, it works exactly how you want it to. Want to get around faster? Figure it out. Mess up a part placement? That's on you. It puts the player in a position of inventing how to play the game. The limit of what you can do truly extends to the limit of your own imagination. On its own, this actually doesn't ruin the Zelda puzzle-solving experience. But there were several problems overshadowing all of it. Many major build parts vanished after a few minutes, collecting said build parts is extremely tedious, and the feature to get around both of those, auto-build, is way too expensive. Top it off with how ridiculously time and resource consuming it is to expand your battery, for these builds to work in the first place. And building feels like constantly being spit in the face. Myself and other people I know who put real hours into building things stopped eventually because it didn't matter how cool the things we made were. All of these problems wear you down over time, and eventually you stop.
I mostly just built things to get around and skip content, like that bike with the two fans and the steering console, and then I also messed around with the like laser death machines. Yeah, it was something like, I don't know, 10 lasers, and it flew up in the sky, and it would kill silver Lionels in like 10 seconds.
Oh, how much time would you say you spent building things like that?
Like that, probably, I don't know, maybe 5 hours just going around messing around. I did spend some time experimenting. I think I went through like 3 different designs in the auto build menu.
What did you think about grinding for the battery? I know that would have taken like a lot of energy to power.
Yeah, it was stupid trying to upgrade the battery. It took several hours, and by the time I was like halfway through the second half of the thing, I just kind of gave up and duped the items to upgrade it. And with that machine, it ran for like probably a minute on like max battery.
The player is almost never encouraged to build, and when you are, it's for really simple and bare bones machines. And then somebody invented this, which, if you don't know, is a super cheap and battery efficient vehicle that can take you anywhere. Do you think the Omnibike impacted your builds? Like, making you build that instead of something more creative?
Yeah, I did frequently just make that when I could have made other stuff that would have been more fun.
Knowledge of this bike spread to every major corner of the internet mentioning Tears of the Kingdom. For the average player, why would you build anything else when this perfect bike solves every problem? As far as I can tell, this bike seems like it was made in the first place because of the limitations of fuse and build parts expiring. It's only made of a steering stick and 2 wheels, parts that last forever. My favorite build part was the bird glider, but it's one of those parts that breaks after 2 minutes of using it. If it didn't, I know I would have kept trying to experiment with it. Bottom line for Fuse is instead of being rewarded for problem solving, you're punished. Quick side note, horses in Breath of the Wild were already very close to useless as a game feature, but the build system and expanded travel in Tears of the Kingdom put the final nail in the coffin. There was some utility to horses before, but now there definitely isn't. The only thing I can think of is the stall horses in the depths, but that's it. Plus, you can't even keep those ones. Remember Wow Guys Look Sky? Well, Sky is empty. Apparently, there were way more plans for the Sky Islands, but they were cut for the final version of the game. Hey, me from the future, not only are those islands completely gone, but the island Link is standing on for that shot doesn't exist either. You can tell from the angle of the surface that it's supposed to be back here somewhere, but, there's nothing. They cut a lot. I personally love all of the unique locations, the occasional weather phenomena, and the art direction is genuinely gorgeous. But almost all of the islands are some kind of copy-paste puzzle shrines, and there aren't enough of those unique locations outside of that. There is one area that's big enough, well-designed, and has a lot to do. But it's the tutorial location, the place you never have any reason to go back to. I mean, how many times did you ever go back to the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild? They show you the best part of the sky as the first thing you do, and then that's kind of it. But what about everything else? The caves were a really interesting feature that paired great with Ascension, but I don't think I was a fan of how many of the unique armor pieces could only be found in caves. It's always nice to find free gear in the middle of doing something else in a cave, but if you ever try to specifically hunt for them, you're screwed. I think the armor hunting was better implemented with the map system leading you to the depths, because it encouraged exploration at almost every level of the map. But cave armor hunting specifically is a thumbs down from me. The rest of the surface is fine, pretty much the same as Breath of the Wild, but with a lot more stuff to do. The depths were another major issue though. Your first 1 to 3 hours in the depths is probably the best part. It's dark, it's scary, and if you pay attention, you'll figure out an interesting little secret of how it works. And then you keep exploring and realize that there's almost nothing to do and everything looks the same. The build stations are useful, and I really liked the fact that there were Yiga clan hideouts, but none of them were very big or had much to do, and the reward you do get from them was usually the subpar build schematics and a couple of crystals. The Colosseums were great, and the final parts of Labyrinths were pretty interesting, but there wasn't enough variation or complexity while exploring. Hell, for most of it, you could just use the Omni bike with a light fused on the front. For a map as big as the surface, it really needed some other environments or something. There could have been sand piles under the desert or snow and ice under the mountains. There just needed to be more to do than find 30 Yiga hideouts you cleared in 1 minute, or fight 20 flux constructs, or grind for hours for Zonaites, or find the 100th Traveler Spear instead of a good weapon. You get what I'm saying. The sky and the depths just needed more. Tears of the Kingdom stands on the shoulders of a giant and sits in the shadow of it at the same time. Remember when I said I had 2 constant thoughts while playing the game? The second one is, God, I miss the Guardians. The world of Breath of the Wild feels so cohesive. This ancient technology litters the world, there's this deep history surrounding it, some of the monsters are made from it, and you need it to even play the game. The abilities, the lore, the map, it's all connected. And then in the middle of looking for wheat, you suddenly hear piano playing and now a laser is targeting you? The Guardians were so iconic. They took skill and practice to learn how to beat, and the reward for beating one was always useful in some way. And then you get to Tears of the Kingdom, and for some reason the shrines, the tech monsters, the abilities, even though it's different, you've already seen all of this before. Nothing here is groundbreaking by any means. If anything, it just feels like Breath of the Wild, but again. The Sheikah technology had a lot of questions surrounding it, giving it this constant, mysterious air that never gets answered. But the Zonai tech tells you everything, and I feel like taking away that mystery makes it lose its magic, on top of already being a seen it, done it kind of gimmick. And the reason I bring up Guardians is because the Zonai tech never has anything like that. There's no hidden ancient tank to jump you at any given moment anywhere, and there's no high skill cap boss that takes a lot of patience to be able to beat. The flux constructs are similar, but it's not the same. They're not hard to beat, and they're definitely not hard to miss either. The only new monster with a high skill cap is the Gleeoks, but they aren't littered throughout the map or hidden at all. There also aren't any mysterious temples or dungeons littered with monsters even close to as difficult to beat either. The Zonai tech in general feels a lot less developed. The aesthetic itself is really unique and beautiful, fusing the neat and clean Japanese Zen visuals with the more organic and chaotic looking designs of ancient Mesoamerican civilizations. But it doesn't bring back that same feeling of playing Breath of the Wild for the first time. There's other things too, but it's really hard to confidently say that this game feels different than Breath of the Wild in any positive way. And it ends up feeling the same as Breath of the Wild in a negative way, one that feels uninspired. For the standards of a Zelda sequel, Tears of the Kingdom isn't great. To be fair, it's hard to stand toe-to-toe with a sequel as fantastic as, say, Majora's Mask. But that's because Majora's Mask didn't particularly feel like a sequel. It took a lot of the mechanics of Ocarina of Time and made something completely new out of it, remixing the Zelda formula in a way that had never been seen before. The repetitive nature of the gameplay never actually felt repetitive, because the world was so fleshed out that you actually needed to go through it over and over again in order to fully understand every detail. It's the kind of thing that works perfectly for a time travel game, especially one like Majora's Mask. It has its problems, sure, but Majora's Mask is a great quote-unquote sequel to Ocarina of Time. The 3D Toon Link DS games can offer some insight to Zelda sequels too.
Of the two that I'm familiar with, Phantom Hourglass is like a direct sequel to Wind Waker. Like, I'm pretty sure it's the exact same Link even. Like, gameplay-wise, though, it's pretty similar to Wind Waker, you know, especially like the overworld traveling mechanics.
If you were to compare So like you can tell Majora's Mask is made on like probably the exact same hardware even, with
Yeah,
like the
same
graphics,
graphics, same
same
yeah,
combat.
yeah.
How like similar or different is it that you can tell that they were like from similar game mechanics?
I mean, yeah, I'd say like a lot of enemies are reused between the two games. I mean, the art style is definitely the same. Like Link looks the same besides his outfit, you know. They definitely reused like a lot of assets between the two DS games for sure.
But even most sequels to anything change it up enough to feel different, which is why it's such a big problem here. Tears of the Kingdom has the same 4 warriors plot, the same 12 memories scattered throughout the map, the same underdeveloped dungeons, and the same ancient tech and abilities gimmick.
I definitely think like it doesn't feel like more Wind Waker. It definitely feels like its own thing. And Spirit Tracks, while like mechanically it feels the same because it's also touchscreen, same controls, same graphics, you know. The gameplay of Spirit Tracks is so different because there's no more ocean, really. You're not sailing, you're on a fucking train.
Ganon/Ganondorf is back, and for being so similar to its prequel, it's like everything that happened in Breath of the Wild, didn't actually. Do you think that, like, the games play off of each other really well? Like, do you think if you started with one and then play, like, the next one, it'd be, like, a really cohesive transition from one game to the other?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's, like, the same universe. It's, like, directly a sequel.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Spirit Tracks has a different link. I think it's, more in the future, but it definitely is like a linear story. The 3 games are in their own timeline, because I know Zelda timelines like branch off and whatnot.
The shrine issue came right back too. It seems like the game devs thought that a lack of dungeon content could be made up for with 100 micro dungeons. But the shrines end up feeling tedious, and it still doesn't hide the fact that the dungeons themselves are under-designed. Some shrines are better, but some are also worse. One of the best dungeons outside of the castle is Garandia, and not because it did anything groundbreaking for Zelda dungeon standards, but because it did so for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I'm not a fan of the Guardian structured dungeons that tend to be predictable and bland, which carried over to a lot of the Tears of the Kingdom dungeons in terms of simple puzzles and how fast they are to clear. But Garandia was actually different. It was in an interesting location and had game mechanics that actually felt like Zelda gameplay again. Plus, the concept for the dungeon itself is really cool. An ancient city deep underground, surrounded by lava and darkness. Again, aside from the castle dungeons, I personally think that this is in the top 2 dungeons for both games, aside from another one I'll mention later. I think my take on the weapons issue is a bit different, because while the arrow UI and fuse tediousness are issues too, I care the most about the weapon durability. I might be crazy, but I'm pretty sure that the weapon durability in Tears of the Kingdom is way worse than in Breath of the Wild. I know you can just build a new one, but not only is that not fun, you can't really build a new weapon in the middle of a battle. Trust me, I've tried. And I swear every weapon breaks in 1 to 3 monster fights, but that might just be me. Either way, for a game so focused on constantly needing weapons, I think there should be some kind of weapon storage system. It was already hard enough in Breath of the Wild to manage your inventory, but Tears of the Kingdom introduces a lot of collectible swords, bows, and shields. And the maximum weapon storage you have, which is at your house, is 9 slots for each. Plus, with Fuse, you can use weapons to store different rare items. Those 9 slots for swords especially aren't enough, and end up spilling over into my inventory at all times. I think on average, I had 3 slots for swords that aren't collectibles or stored items. You could say that I should have just used them anyways, but For a game that advertises itself for being a sandbox, I really needed that storage for things like custom builds, so that wasn't an option for me. Here's a list of things that didn't fit anywhere else and also aren't that long. Why did they remove square bombs? And durians? The sequel timing makes no sense. You're telling me that the Guardian tech was all removed in less than 5 years, but they also haven't rebuilt things yet? I will never not be mad that Gerudo Valley didn't come back for this game. Why did they take Eventide away from us? Yeah, looks like that's everything. So here's my proposal. The source material of Tears of the Kingdom has a lot going for it. Even with how long it took to come out, they clearly still didn't have enough time to fully flesh out the game. So to really hone in on those good parts, the first step is to make compromises. The first one is definitely the easiest one. If nothing else changed but a trade between the number of shrines and another 1 or 2 decent dungeons, I think the game would immediately be better. Since some shrines are actually good, we can cut out the ones that are not. I get teaching players how mechanics work, but the world itself does that well enough. And have you seen how big some shrines are? Surely something like 5 of the largest shrines put together are already bigger than half of the dungeons are. Fast travel would be cut down on, but that would encourage players to actually travel across the map more with more creative means. And since shrines offer a reward for completing them, other shrines can offer more blessings to make up for the losses, especially the more difficult shrines. With dungeons, more of them need to be in tight and cramped spaces. I don't think puzzles in a 3D world are as difficult when you can immediately see everything you need to do. The Lightning Temple, the other best dungeon, is a great example because the closed quarters creates a nice contrast with the free and open world you're used to, forcing you to trace your roots back to games like Ocarina of Time and play through the dungeon more thoroughly. Zelda Dungeons of the past rewarded players for being more thorough by providing things like resources and upgrades of some kind. In fact, I think if the player was rewarded for actually playing the game more often in general, then it wouldn't feel like such a drag to play. Next up on some compromises we can make, cut down on random structures in the depths so when you do discover something, it feels more special. A lot of the abandoned mines are fine, but the treasure is usually out in the open, so maybe there should be something you need to do in order to gain access to it. There's already not that many of these locations, and cutting down on shrines can help put development towards things like this too. This next one is also a more experimental thought, but if it's done well, maybe the light route should only appear where the cut shrines used to be in the overworld. The distance that the light route shines would need to be increased to cover for it, but it's an interesting idea. The only real reward light route gives you, other than fast travel, is just lighting up the area, so generally having less of them lighting up more area might be more exciting. I don't know about you, but every time a light route lit up practically nothing, I rolled my eyes. Another addition to the depths with all of this replaced development would be something to allow you to keep stall horses in the depths. I think it would make traversal down there feel much more interesting. So many places are covered in gloom, and this is actually the only way in the game to physically walk through it safely for long periods of time. Every time I found a stall horse, I ended up riding it for a while. I didn't have to build something, so it made my life easier. Next up, the story needs to be completely reworked. I genuinely think that it's the worst part of the game. The flashbacks from the tiers are fine, but specifically the arcs with the sages are 1-to-1 the warriors from Breath of the Wild, but again, And if we're still doing things by making compromises, then cutting down on the Zonai information would help bring back some of the mystery that the Sheikah tech was able to have. The concept is there, it just needs to be redone. Also, can we cut out the Great Fairy side quests? If you want to make them look like these great mystical beings, then we can turn to other Zelda games again for inspiration. Or we could even leave it to the already existing challenge of finding them in the first place and collecting enough money to earn upgrades, since learning how to gain large amounts of rupees is one of the well-implemented skill-building parts of the game. I liked how the old locations had some leftover resources to collect, and it's a nice callback to Breath of the Wild. The new locations should still be in interesting places that a player might naturally find through exploring, instead of how all of them were just near stables. Weapons storage is a must. I talked about why earlier, but for a game that gives so many different collectible items, people need a place to put them. I don't think it's fair to force the player to use most of their inventory, or just use the weapons anyway, even if you have a way to get them back. Link's house is already a good enough place for it, so maybe adding some way to increase the number of frames, or even a storage chest of some kind, would easily solve the problem. The world of Breath of the Wild loved to challenge the player. And while most people don't like to be challenged and just leave, some people will gladly step up to take it on. Even for the people who don't bother with things like that, they may still have to find a creative way to get around it, especially if it's blocking them from something they need or want to do. In a strange way, making the game more challenging ends up encouraging players to try harder, even if it's just to avoid the challenges. And Tears of the Kingdom needs more challenging parts, both optional and not. Dragonhead Island was a great example in the game where you could actually just brute force your way through it. I did it before I was supposed to, and I ended up needing to use Riju's electric field to be able to see anything. Again, I wasn't supposed to do it like that, but the way I had to problem solve through it was so fun that it's something I immediately remembered when trying to think of an example here. There's also the Forgotten Temple from Breath of the Wild that was loaded with guardians and ends up becoming either a stealth mission or a great test of your combat skill if you actually chose to fight all of them. And if they could have brought something like Eventide Island back instead of just fracturing it into much easier shrines, that would be great. The challenges themselves also can't be just random bullshit. Oh no, the tower is snowed in. Oh no, other inconvenience right when you arrive. The way these were presented was a little silly too. It's moments like these that make the game a lot harder to take seriously. The tower challenges in Breath of the Wild, when present, were things like improve your climbing or find a creative way to get around it, and here's a test of your skill, navigate through these monsters. And it wasn't most of the towers having challenges like this, they only popped up every now and then. Generally, I think the greatest strength of Zelda games overall is problem solving with limited resources. And since Tears of the Kingdom traded a lot of those tools for exploration, there needs to be something to fill the gap. The sky overhaul is really needed. First off, the Great Sky Island has to be smaller. Not just to cut down on the developmental resources, but because it's too good. Your first impression of a game shouldn't be the best part, because everything else is going to pale in comparison. Much like the Great Plateau, the Great Sky Island should be pretty average as far as gameplay goes. I think something close to a third or even half of it can be removed and still teach the player the basics of how to use the abilities. Then, when you leave, you have a foundation of knowledge to build upon yourself, instead of being spoon-fed to you afterwards by a bunch of shrines. Then, for the other islands, instead of so many copy-pasted landscapes and challenges, they could replace them with some of those larger islands we saw before they got cut. Whatever it is, it just needs to be not the same thing over and over again. The sky is the most beautiful part of this game. It's affecting the castle, it's the tutorial area, It's on the cover of the box, for God's sake. This is the key aesthetic that Tears of the Kingdom needed to focus on to feel different than Breath of the Wild. The wind in your hair, the arm on your body, new plants, new architecture, this is what it should have been,